Thanks, Mr. Dilly. Hi, my name's Tony Bradman and I write children's books. And the book I'm going to talk to you about today is called Operation Banana and it's published by Barrington Stoke. Operation Banana is set in World War II, a subject I've always been interested in, partly because my parents grew up in that time, they were children then. But it's about a girl called Susan and how she's worried about her mum. Chapter 1 is called Doom and Gloom. And it's set in North London in November 1942. It all started the night Susan's mum burst into tears at dinner. Susan and mum were sitting at the kitchen table in their flat with the radio on. It was the BBC News at 6 o'clock, but Susan wasn't listening. She was too excited about what was on her plate. As a special treat, the butcher had let mum have 2 pork chops. They were tiny and a bit tough. But Susan couldn't remember the last time they'd had meat for dinner, and she really wanted to enjoy it. Mum was still wearing her khaki work overalls and had a red scarf tied up over her fair hair. Susan's hair was brown and cut in a neat bob, and she was wearing her school uniform, an old navy blue pinafore dress and a white blouse. Suddenly, Mum began to cry, the tears running down her cheeks and dripping onto the table. Susan sat there for a moment with a piece of pork on her fork halfway to her mouth. Then she jumped up and hugged Mum. "I'm sorry, love," Mum said softly. "I just can't bear it anymore. The chops are a bit hard to chew," said Susan, "but they're not that bad." "I don't mean the chops," said Mum. "But I do wish we could have something nice to eat for once. It's just that this blasted war has been going on for so long, I've forgotten what it's like to be happy. Listen to the news. It's all doom and gloom." Mum pointed at the radio and started to sob again. Susan hugged her more tightly and began to listen to what the reporter was saying. And there's a bit here about the war and how terrible it was and all the battles that Britain was losing at the time. And it was just getting worse and worse and worse at that time in the war. "I see what you mean, Mum," said Susan. "Tell you what, you go and relax in the front room while I do the washing up, then I'll make you a nice cup of tea." "Thanks, love. I really don't know what I'd do without you," said Mum. She blew her nose. "I'm just tired. It's been really tough at the factory this week." Susan put their plates in the sink. She had been helping Mum almost as long as she could remember. They'd had to look after each other since the war had begun in 1939. Dad had joined the army right away and he'd been sent off to fight in North Africa. He wrote long, funny letters full of jokes and drawings of camels, but it wasn't the same as having him at home. And of course, they worried about him all the time. And then there's a bit about how he used to send the letters, but they'd stopped for a while. They hadn't heard from him for a while. And then there's another bit about how they had to go and shelter in the underground station in the tube when the bombs were being dropped in the Blitz and how terrible that was. All very worrying, very depressing. And she remembered the cheery song that Mum had always sung to keep her calm when the bombs are falling. "Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile." Suddenly, Susan felt bad. She hadn't been looking after Mum well enough. Mum hadn't smiled for ages, and Susan wished she'd noticed before. Why hadn't she done something sooner to help Mum? A few moments later, Susan went into the front room with the tea things on a tray. A teapot, their best china cups and saucers, a nice little jug for the milk. "Here you are, madam," Susan said in a posh voice. "Tea is served." Mum didn't answer. She was curled up on the settee, asleep. Her eyes were shut tight, and she twitched a couple of times as if she were having a bad dream. And that's when Susan decided she really had to cheer Mum up. The only question was, how? And the answer to that is something you'll find out if you read the book. But of course, it probably involves a banana.